My name is Huang. I am an artist living here in New York and also a professor at the University of Connecticut in digital media and design. Today I'll be talking about new ecological intimacies. My first encounter with masks was before 2020 and coronavirus. It was 1991 and I had just returned home to Saudi Arabia as the Gulf War was coming to a close. The Kuwaiti oil fields were on fire, and every day the skies were dark with smoke. Our masks could not keep out the soot, and at night I would blow my nose and clear the blackened mucus from my sinuses. At the age of 11, I already understood the fragility of the human body within this massive hyperobject of the Anthropocene. My body knew through smoke-filled nightmares that we live in intertwined existence with the sky, the earth, the petroleum we draw up, the plastics we dispose of. Our bodies know that we are deeply enmeshed within this ecology, but a capitalist anthropocentric culture defined by boundaries and hierarchies between insiders and outsiders, humans and non-humans, tells us otherwise. If we are to change the trajectory of global warming, then we will need more than just numbers and data. We will need a culture shift. We will need what anthropologist Deborah Bird Rose calls radically reworked forms of attention. We will need encounters that are poetic, artistic, imaginative, and speculative, encounters that can alter how we see ourselves in relation to our ecology. In my current work in progress, Erotic Ecologies, I re-envision our landscape as an erotic body, a metaphorical space in which all ecological entities are messily enmeshed. In this work, the erotic acts as a reanimating force that breathes life into a dying landscape. Using AI text generation and deepfake animation technologies, I amalgamated over 600 field books from the Smithsonian archives with erotic material from literature and film in order to generate a synthetic media. Working within a queer and feminist ecological framework, the AI creates a chimeric body imbuing our ecological memories with a seductive will to live. In this work, I was interested in the subjective memories of human, non-human intimacy. In this excerpt, a scientist says of a silvery brown tamarin, "It does have one peculiar and very destructive pattern, which I might call tongue flickering. It's probably slightly hostile." Merging these texts together with erotic literature, I trained the AI to generate an endless supply of erotic ecological texts. Here is a sample.
They moved like a mountain, tugging at my Shanghai beach bed and setting off my prairie rams with their steamy vegetations.
I was also interested in the fieldbook images, which capture species and landscapes which have been lost to time through human activity. This 1957 photograph taken by ornithologist Alexander Wetmore is of man-o'-wars flocking over the Isla Iguana. I processed these images using deepfake technology typically used to animate one human with emotions of another. In this technical demonstration, I reanimate the ecological body of the Panamanian sky. And now I would like to show a prototype of a visual essay that brings the text and the images together.
She shuddered against him, her Andean sparrows quaking, and when they finally slowed to look up at her, they saw her bayou was a wild tumble, and her face was glowing.
By reanimating our landscapes and breathing new life into our memories, perhaps we can create new languages of caring and begin to imagine different futures. I'm currently in the nascent stages of the project and looking to further my creative research and development. I am seeking funding and production support from institutions to conduct performance and voice explorations of the AI text, connections to art institutions and galleries to explore exhibition and performance opportunities, and introductions to AI, queer ecology, and post-human researchers to collaborate on research and presentations. If you're interested in these topics and talking, I would love to connect with you. I am dropping my contact information in the chat here. If you go ahead and click on that first link, it'll bring you to the project page on my website, or you can connect with me on social. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sue. That was really special. I'm really curious about how, just like watching the kind of visual essay, there was like a darkness, I think, to like the score, I guess it was like, and that kind of juxtaposed against this idea of like eroticism was really fascinating to me. And I wonder if you could unpack that a little bit for us.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think there is a kind of like darkness in there, and I think it's intermixed with this idea of also hope for a different kind of future. And I think that I was like really interested here in thinking about these kinds of intermixing of different possibilities. So although there's a kind of hope in the project, a kind of hope for a different kind of future, it's not necessarily an optimistic project per se. There's a kind of like warning embedded inside of it, I think, which is reflected in the sound and the audio of the work.
Not to get too biological, but sex is obviously crucial for, creating a biological system and ecology. I mean, of course, there's asexual reproduction, but a lot of, as beings evolve further along, sexual reproduction is much more common. It's very unlikely like an individual is going to split into two. And so I'm just wondering how much you're thinking about processes of evolution and origin and population and beyond our emotional processing of what it means to be erotic, how much of it are you thinking about just ecosystems that reproduce this way? When you say breathe life,
yeah,
right, breathe life back into the system, that was a very powerful poetic phrase.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, one of the interesting things about this project as I'm working through it is that there is this embedded sexuality in the project, but I would say that the project is not directly about sex. So the sexuality is a part of the erotic here. And so the erotic is kind of like a broader umbrella for me, which is really about, it's really about desire. And the erotic here, it acts as a kind of metaphor then for a lot of other things, which are these kind of like hidden desires, or this will to live, or this desire to exist in opposition to oblivion. And so in that sense, there's like a sexuality interwoven to the project, but the erotic covers a kind of like wider spectrum of thought. And in that kind of like, I'll kind of like follow along with that thought that thinking about those like biological systems, I was like really interested in how, the humans are interwoven with these biological entities. And the AI also plays a kind of like special role in this piece, in which the humans are also interwoven with the AI as well. So there's this kind of like feedback loop that happens between like the human and the technological systems, and then the human and the biological systems. And so when I think about this project, I think very much about this kind of like idea of like I call it like a trichotomy, like this trichotomy of systems within this kind of whole ecology. But I'm thinking very much about like Timothy Morton's idea of like the mesh, or this kind of idea of like a mesh system for ecologies, in which we start to break down that trichotomy of the three things. And so we exist instead in this kind of like messy, like interactive, intertwined space, as opposed to these like strictly defined boundary spaces.
Thank you so much, Sue. That was so fascinating. I love the use of deep fake tech, and I just, in my mind, I was like, I want to walk through a natural history museum and just hear this in the background as I'm just like exploring all the exhibits. I was like, that's what I want to see. Okay, so we